Caliban's Hand was introduced in Season of the Haunted to a very muted response, given it had some bugs, but Bungie, well, they fixed those bugs now, and Caliban's Hand is up there with one of the best hunter exotic armor pieces in the game right now, which is really effective in all levels of content. Makes running around as a hunter pretty fun. Well, today I'm going to run through a Hunter Solar 3.0 build with Caliban's Hand. We're going to look at the aspects and the fragments, the weapons and the mods, so you can ignite everything that gets in your way. Well, if you're new around here or find this useful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below for all the latest Destiny 2 content, and turn on notifications by hitting that bell. And roughly 98% of viewers who watch This Week in Video Games aren't subscribed, so subscribe today and never miss an update. Well, the young Amkara's Spine has been a go-to build for many hunters since the Solar 3.0 rework was released. Now, given how easy it is to chain together multiple knife kills, well, now Caliban's Hand has been fixed. Well, I think Star Eater Scales and young Amkara's Spine, they've definitely got some tough competition. Well, in hotfix 4.1.5, Bungie said they fixed an issue where Caliban's Hand behaviour was different in PvE and PvP. Ignition will now proc when defeating enemies by both direct hits and explosions for both game modes. And unfortunately, this fix introduced a new issue that we're investigating where Caliban's Hand will only apply Scorch to a single target. They've also fixed an issue where Caliban's Hand wasn't working as intended with Radiant and the knock 'em down aspect. So, good news, all of that has been fixed apart from that new issue that has been introduced, but most of it has been fixed, and now Caliban's Hand Hunter Solar 3.0 builds are really fun. Well, the key change is this one, so Ignition will now proc when defeating enemies by both direct hits and explosions for PvE and PvP. That's going to make it much easier to get things to explode with ease. Well, this build today is going to be focused around ignitions, which is a fancy Solar 3.0 way of saying making things explode. So in other builds, we've been using Scorch to build up stacks. That culminates in ignitions or explosions. But here we're going to skip the Scorch stacks and jump straight to the explosions. This is going to be achieved through a combination of our exotic armor, Caliban's Hand, plus our aspects and our fragments. Well, the main perk of Caliban's Hand is Roast 'em. So your proximity knife scorches targets it damages with its explosions or ignites targets on final blow, and after throwing a proximity knife you gain increased melee regeneration until that knife explodes. So we're going to buff these effects with the fragment Ember of Eruption, where solar ignitions have an increased area of effect. Basically, this fragment is going to make our explosions bigger, allowing us to deal more damage to more enemies. Well, given we're going to be running around with a throwing knife and constantly throwing it to explode enemies, this is going to be bolstered with both aspects and fragments through Knock 'em Down and Ember of Torches. Well, Torches are going to make us and nearby fireteam members radiant on powered melee kills, and the Knock 'em Down aspect is then going to refund melee energy while you are radiant. Plus we've got Gambler's Dodge, which has the ability to refund our melee too, so ideally with this build we're going to be running throwing knives, exploding enemies. We should be able to repeat that cycle very quickly. So without further delay today, let's jump into the build, and first of all have a look at the Solar 3.0 setup. So for the super, I'm using Blade Barrage. For the class ability, I'm using Gambler's Dodge. For the melee ability, I'm using Proximity Knife. And for the grade, I'm using a Fusion Grenade, although you can use any grenade, that is down to personal preference. With the aspects, I'm using Knock 'em Down, so Blade Barrage launches more projectiles, and while Radiant, final blows with any equipped throwing knife fully refunds the melee energy. Then we got Gunpowder Gamble, so defeat targets with abilities, solar debuffs or solar weapons to charge up an improvised solar explosive, and throw a solar explosive so it can be shot in mid-air to cause an ignition. Well, then I'm going to be using these fragments, so Ember of Torches, powered melee attacks against combatants make players and nearby allies radiant. Ember of Empyrean, so solar weapon or ability final blows extend the duration of restoration and radiant effects applied to you. Then you've got Ember of Eruption, so your solar ignitions have an increased area of effect. So Knock 'em Down is a really important one here because we want to fully refund our melee energy on a knife kill. That allows us to run around chaining kills together with the throwing knife melee. Then we're going to be using Torches to get Radiant, which means approximately 20% increase to weapon damage. Then we're going to increase that effect with Empyrean, and Eruption is really good for that increased area of effect for the solar ignitions, which we're then going to focus on because of Caliban's Hand. Well, next up, let's have a look at the exotic armor. So we are using Caliban's Hand, of course. Comes with the perk Roast 'em, so your proximity knife scorches targets it damages with its explosions or ignites targets on final blow. After throwing a proximity knife, you gain an increased melee regeneration until that knife explodes. And if you haven't yet got Caliban's hand, then get yourself into a Legend and Master Lost Sector solo with a Hunter on Arms Day and complete the Lost Sector solo for a chance at the Caliban's hand to drop for you. If you don't get it the first time, keep trying and you'll get it after a few tries. Next up, let's have a look at the weapons. So in the kinetic slot, I'm using Riptide. It's a legendary kinetic fusion rifle dealing stasis damage. It's got a rapid fire frame, meaning deeper ammo reserves and slightly faster reload when the magazine is empty. So auto-loading holster and chill clip would be a decent roll. So with chill clip, direct hits with the top half of the magazine cause a detonation that slows nearby targets, and that gives the build a nice fire and ice quality. In the energy slot, I'm using the Callus Mini Tool. It's a legendary energy submachine gun, meaning it's got superb handling, you move faster with a lightweight weapon equipped. I've got one with incandescent, and that means defeating a target spreads scorch to those nearby, so more powerful combatants and opposing guardians cause scorch in a larger radius. And this is going to help you spread scorch even more and works really well in partnership with the rest of that Solar 3.0 build. In the power slot, I'm using Solar's Scar. This is a solar power sword. I've got one with chain reaction. Also, you can stand back and fire projectiles with this sword, so it's really good. And if you've got one with chain reaction, that's going to make your enemies explode. So it's a legendary power solar sword. It's a caster frame, meaning you can launch a heavy projectile attack. The heavy attacks are stronger with full energy. As I said, if you can get one with chain reaction, that is really good. So next up, let's have a look at the mods. So players should be prioritising high mobility and resilience for their hunter, and armour mods that create elemental wells, increase damage after picking that elemental well up, regenerate class and melee ability energy, and increase that damage resistance. That is considered to be just as important. So I'm using some basic elemental well mods here. So melee well maker, so powered melee combatant final blow spawn elemental wells that matches a subclass energy type. I'm using bountiful wells, so elemental well mods that cause you to spawn elemental wells now stack, spawning additional wells for each additional copy of the mod you have equipped. So basically, I've got one Bountiful Wells equipped on a solar piece of armour. Now I've got 3 melee well maker, meaning for each powered melee kill, I'm going to get 3 wells spawned. And because I've got Bountiful Wells, that's going to stack elemental wells, and you're going to be creating elemental wells left, right, and centre. Also using Font of Might, so picking up an elemental well that matches your subclass energy type grants a temporary bonus to weapon damage, and then finally Classy Restoration, activating your solar class ability grants you restoration. Although in the future, if you're watching this and Classy Restoration isn't available, you could always use that healing grenade for hunters. That'll probably work well in the future. And also, we don't know what's going to come with the artifact mods in the future. I'm sure there's going to be a decent replacement for Classy Restoration. So we're going to be creating elemental wells through our melee kills, given the constant refund of our explosive knife. Bountiful wells are going to give us more elemental wells for each instance of that melee well maker. So every time we get a melee kill, we're going to get loads of wells. Then we're using Font of Might to boost our weapon damage, given we're picking up solar elemental wells. So pair that all up with solar weapons and the solar subclass. This build is going to be a whole load of fun. Well, let me know what you think of the build in the comments, and let me know if you've got any improvements. Well, that is it for this Hunter Solar 3.0 build with Caliban's hand in Destiny 2. And as always, thank you so much for watching or listening. For more Destiny 2 content like this, hit that subscribe button down below and subscribe to This Week in Video Games. Or you can check me out on Twitter at TWIVG Podcast. If you enjoyed this video, found it useful, liking and sharing the video would really help me out. Otherwise, check out the other videos on the channel. Well, thanks again, and I'll see you soon.